Hello, everybody, and welcome to the I'm Not Crazy podcast. You're joined with me, Andrew Venor, your host. I'm a ghost. We're hosted. We're joined today with our guest, Matthew.
Hi.
Why'd you dress like Link?
Well, I got your email that said not to, dress crazy, but I got it as I was
I emailed you and asked
walking
you
in.
to dress as something scary. I'm a ghost.
I didn't see that, and I already have the Link costume on.
I asked if you could do something pertaining to our topic, and you're dressed as Link from The Legend of Zelda.
I already didn't see that, and I'm dressed as Link. So, I got the shield,
Yeah.
the sword.
You do. That's yours.
Do you like it?
So today we're going to be covering a topic that I've been looking forward to since I started this podcast. Interruption time!
My ear fell.
Guess what?
What?
Do you know what episode today is?
Is it 8?
No.
Is it 9?
No.
Is it 9.5?
No.
Is it 10?
It's 10! It's episode 10. We made it 10 episodes. How crazy is that?
Congratulations,
Thank you,
buddy.
man. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
And I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to ruin your podcast. I'm going to put this down.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I think I'm actually going to go ahead and open this up.
It took
It
60
is so
seconds.
hot. So today we're celebrating our 10th episode. A little bit of a milestone for us, which is kind of cool. If you're not watching the podcast on YouTube and you're listening to a podcast app, that's fine. Continue doing that. But we do have video content now on YouTube. We also have a TikTok and an Instagram. The TikTok is I'm Not Crazy Podcast. The Instagram is I'm Not Crazy NY. And go support that if you would like. So today we're joined with Matthew, my cousin. We've
Hi,
been
everybody.
cousins our whole lives.
And you know what's crazy is that the two of us have led very creative lives, and we love making things, but we've never ever collaborated.
We have never made anything together.
We never made anything together.
This is the first time.
The first time we've ever made something together. It's really special.
Yeah.
I'm 26. You're older than me.
Yeah.
So for 26 years, we've never made anything.
Never, not even one
Not
time.
one thing.
Not when we were 8.
Not a cooking show.
Not when we were 10. When you were in high school, definitely didn't make a ton of short films when I was in.
Nothing.
Why did the light just go off?
The cat climbed.
He's so cute, the little pussy. You want to give a little description of what you do?
No.
That's fair. So we're going to get into the intro. On October 30th, 1938, fear would spread across the United States of America. The legendary Orson Welles would begin his broadcast of the War of the Worlds. But little did Welles know, his adaptation might have been a little too realistic.
You spelled too wrong.
Set to cause widespread pandemonium across the continent never seen before. Join us as we uncover what really happened on that fateful Halloween night before. It's time to dive into the infamous War of the Worlds. Panic! The last episode was aliens, straight up aliens, abduction, all that. You listened to it, actually.
Yes.
This episode is not that, but it kind of is. There's a ton of alien talk, all that stuff. I'm dressed as a ghost.
And I listened,
really cool stuff.
I listened to it. I'm not a big fan of your podcast, but I did listen to the last episode.
I fucking hate you.
Now,
But
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're the guest.
So, I want to say that I graduated with a a major in communications and a minor in cinema studies. So this was shoved down our throats in college. Orson Welles and the War of the Worlds Panic.
Really?
Yeah, because it
cool.
showed the power of radio.
The sociological effect is it's still being studied today. It's a very, very I can't get over myself dressed as a ghost.
Your nose makes a teardrop sweat stain. Now you look like a knight.
There you go.
Looks like you're wearing a tampon. Why there?
There you go.
Hi, Andrew.
How do I look? Hey, everybody.
You just look like you're wearing a garbage bag.
This costume's going to fall apart
This is
slowly
ridiculous.
throughout the show. For this episode, most of my research was done through documentaries and articles, and of course, the broadcast itself. The broadcast is available for YouTube on free, and if you love podcast dramas, then you'll love the broadcast. It's really, actually, genuinely great still. When I listened to it, I was expecting to listen to a little bit of a goofy 1930s thing, you know, because you listen to music of that time and it's we have a tractor and I love my wife, but it's it's really good. It's still genuinely great.
Yeah.
And the acting is fantastic. The story is great. The way that they changed the story to match the modern times was really good. So I encourage you to go listen to it either before or after you listen to this.
How long is it?
It is 55 minutes long.
I listened to it once in college, and I love that it makes it sound like you're just listening to the radio. There's like advertisements in it,
Yeah.
you know.
So we're going to get into that because the advertisements are, we'll get into it.
Okay.
So I feel like to really understand the story that we're about to tell, it's very important to listen to the broadcast because you can't really understand how the reaction was until you actually listen to it for yourself. And there are parts that I was walking to the store in broad daylight. I've listened to it 5 times in the last week. And I was walking to Walgreens in broad daylight. And he's talking about walking through into the Holland Tunnel and seeing the city and all that. And it genuinely gave me I was kind of creeped out thinking about it. Because it's such a, especially living in New York, it's such a scary thought.
Yeah.
That one day the whole city will just be gone due to fucking aliens.
It's like you're like a stripper.
I am a stripper.
I'm going to start taking articles of clothing off as well. So
Just end up naked by the end of the show. So those are the sources for the show. There were a couple books that are written about it. Orson Welles wrote a book about it himself. We're going to find out later that the articles that were written play the biggest role in the whole story. Before we get into the story itself, it's very important to know who Orson Welles as a person was, especially at the time. He's considered one of the most influential storytellers and artists of the 20th century on a global scale. He was an innovator of radio with things like War of the Worlds, film, Citizen Kane. And theater with things with his works in Shakespeare. He was at it for almost 5 decades, with the War of the Worlds broadcast being kind of the spark that kind of blew him up a little bit. He was somewhat well known beforehand. Like, he had local fame. He lived in Chicago for a while. He had fame there. He lived in Europe. He started in Ireland, which we'll find out. The War of the Worlds is what kind of catapulted him into stardom.
And when he did it, he was like 22.
He was 23.
That's insane.
Yeah, his first name is George. Found that out, had no idea.
Also, his first name is actually George.
Wells started his career in Europe after his father's death in the States, where he lied about being a Broadway star to get auditions in Ireland, which is funny. Hey, what's up with like genius creators lying to get things? Because
back then it was a lot easier.
Yeah, didn't Spielberg just kind of sit in an office until they gave it to him?
Yeah,
in
the 70s.
So fun. Imagine just being able to do that now.
And then they gave him, just put his name on the room and everything. They gave him a desk. That's a real story.
You just go to ShopRite and you just stand there scanning stuff. They're like, "Who are you?" I don't know.
Like, I'm here now. Like, okay,
all right. Well, better put him on payroll. He continued his work until it dried up and then eventually moved to the U.S., where he gained some notoriety as an actor in different Shakespeare productions. He was primarily a theater actor at this point.
Right.
This would lead to getting his first radio job in 1934, where he'd write and act in a ton of uncredited radio shows. He'd eventually catch the eye of CBS Radio, who wanted to make Wells into a weekly content. He agreed, and it would eventually turn into the Mercury Theater on the Air, named after his theater company, the Mercury Theater. And this leads us right up into October of 1938. At this point, he is, from the people that knew him, they knew him as someone who would do something that would be super innovative and all that stuff. He was not known by anyone else. So to everyone else after this happened, they were just like, who the fuck is this guy? Mm-hmm. He just kind of rattled the world of film and radio. It's kind of wild. Wells decided to create a radio adaptation of the show, The War of the Worlds, by H.G. Wells, for his Halloween version of the show, as we stated a couple times earlier. Howard Koch would adapt the story to fit into 1938 New Jersey, New York. Originally, the story took place in London. And it was just, they touched down in London, whatever. He just literally just took the story and just moved it to Jersey. Wells loved the idea and wanted to take it a step further, so he made the show into a series of emergency news bulletins, which would interrupt the normal broadcast as what they called dance music.
Right.
And this is funny to me, because when they say dance music, you assume it would be like 1930s, like... It's not that fast. It's like... Doom. Doom, doom. And it's like, how did you dance this? Like that.
It's all they had.
It's crazy.
It wasn't Elvis yet.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. They were just like, yeah, we could dance to this, and it's just them rhythmically swaying back and forth. He wanted to make it as realistic as possible, getting influences from a similar broadcast out of England in 1928. The broadcast claimed that rioters had taken to the streets of London, and it was meant to be comedic and over the top as to not cause panic. Though it did cause slight concern, but there wasn't the mass panic, reports of mass panic. None of that happened from the English version of this event. Wells felt an invasion of Martians to Earth would similarly be over the top, which is a fair assessment.
Yeah.
So he went all in, slowly adding more and more up until they said 3 minutes before they started. He was still adding to the script, which blows me away. And he was known for that. He would work on something until the fucking second they started recording, and then he would sometimes just throw it out in the middle of it and just improv it all. He was nuts. So now we're going to get into the broadcast itself.
Before we do that, I have a few questions and concerns. Like you said, it didn't cause mass panic like in America. So I'm not sure if I should ask this question
in
now
England,
or later. Yeah, like you said earlier. Because when you hear of the World of Worlds broadcast, everyone thinks of it as like mass hysteria, right? Everyone running through the streets, like throwing shopping bags and everything.
We're going to get into the reports of what people were doing, and it's really stupid.
Okay. Yeah. And now I heard somewhere, I don't remember where I heard this, but I heard that all of that is bullshit. That none of that ever happened.
So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But I don't want to give too much away.
Okay. Whoa, take off another item of clothing.
Okay. Cool. All right. We're going to be so naked. So the broadcast would begin with a 23-year-old Wells giving a monologue about the state of the Earth from an unspecified time after the foreshadowed events of what he's going to talk about. He ends his minute-long monologue, and the format of the show sets in. So this is like I was saying before. It has scheduled interruptions from them, more or less just interrupting normal music with bulletins that sounded exactly like a normal news bulletin. So an announcer comes in and gives the supposed 2.3 million listeners, which is kind of big for the time, according to the monologue, a quick weather report. Other than an unknown cause and atmospheric pressure over Nova Scotia, everything was fine. I gotta be honest with you. I have no idea if that pressure is supposed to mean aliens or not. They just kind of throw that in, and then they never mention Nova Scotia again. So basically, it's just dance music. And then, like, imagine if you were watching the news, right? You're watching the news, and then they're like, okay, well, let's cut to Sam Champion for the weather. And Sam Champion was like, I mean, there's a very, very strange pressure over Nova Scotia, but otherwise it's going to be like 66 to 40. And then that's it. And then it just cuts away, and they never mention that again. So I'm not sure if that has to do with the alien thing, but I don't know. I just found that to be really weird.
Interesting.
The show continues on with music from the time, interrupted a few times to give information about the music. So they would say like it was all Spanish music, which is interesting. It was all like 30s Spanish music.
That is interesting.
And I believe the name of what they were calling the fake show in the show was called like A Touch of Spain or something like that.
Yeah, that's the name of the cologne I use.
What do you smell like?
Spain. The touch of it.
Yeah, it needs to smell like really thin beef. That's all I know about Spain is that they have that really thin beef, and I want it.
That was my nickname in high school.
Really thin beef?
Just thin beef.
Mine was thick beef.
Nice. High five.
We're cousins. Shit. And then the show really started. After a few songs, an announcer interrupts with a special bulletin stating an explosion has been seen on the surface of Mars. The announcer explains that Professor Pearson, who was played by Wells, from an observatory at Princeton, and this is something that I think is so funny, because they keep saying the Princeton Observatory at Princeton, and they say that every time as if you can't put together that the Princeton Observatory is at Princeton, but whatever. They describe what is said to be a blue jet of flame heading towards the Earth. After a few more minutes of music, another bulletin comes through claiming the government meteorological... Can you help me?
Meteorological
Bureau has requested the observatory to monitor what's happened on the surface of Mars. After asking the professor a few questions, the music just kind of continued like normal. And it would be at this point that the listeners really kind of were tuning in. It was during the initial broadcast. It said, the legend goes that a lot of people missed the initial monologue because it was only like 2 minutes.
Monologue, like, hey, this is a joke, guys. It's fine.
So the original monologue is like it's from the book. It's basically like if you took the intro to the book and made it into a radio show. That's what it is.
I think that was in the Spielberg movie too.
It's something like man, he's going here, but he doesn't have time because he's one with nature and not. But you never know what's up in the sky. It's like that's kind of what it is.
It is Morgan Freeman too. Was this live?
Yes.
So Orson Welles was in studio saying this.
Yes, and there were pictures of it. It's really fascinating.
I've seen the one of him like going crazy.
There's one with him
up.
with his arm up like this that's super famous. That's from the World of Worlds broadcast. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at the pictures, there's an entire orchestra in there. The noises that they actually make during the broadcast is shockingly efficient.
That must have been the most fun job anyone could ever ask.
It was pure fucking chaos at all times. It was said that Wells was running from job to job at this point because he would do a weekly radio show that would practice every night. They would do rehearsal every night. Then he was doing theater, which was also doing rehearsal every day. So he was just waking up, going to rehearsals, performing, leaving, running to the radio station and doing this radio show. He had no time to himself at all, but he just dove in headfirst to all this. But it was pure chaos. And they enjoyed it after. Like, they looked back at it fondly. But in the moment, it seemed like everybody was just kind of just trying to get shit out.
Sure.
He was said to be making $2,000 a week at this point. In 1938.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So he wasn't it's not like he was a starving artist that needed to do this. It was just his love for it.
Yeah. If he worked for a month back then, he could afford a house.
Yeah, 100%. That's a crazy point.
So you said this was interrupting songs and stuff. Mm-hmm. So was all of this planned and in studio? Were they playing the songs for this, or were they just taking songs from an already existing radio station and interrupting it?
No. They were playing the music specifically for the show.
Everything about this was for the show?
It was all planned ahead of time.
Okay.
So Howard Koch wrote, he adapted it for the radio show, and him and Wells kind of wrote in specific things, and then Wells added all the extra bulletins after.
Okay.
Initially, I think all it was going to be was, there was an explosion on Mars, and then an invasion, and I'm pretty sure he added in last minute the interview with the professor, the Princeton Observatory, all that type of stuff. And when he added that stuff in, it kind of transformed the story into be a little bit more and much more realistic. So due to a lack of commercials, some listeners thought that they were listening to normal scheduled radio once they tuned in and not a reimagining of the World of Worlds. So the legend goes that people were listening to a different show, which we'll get into in a little bit, and there was a skit at the beginning of the show. After the skit was over, they then moved to like a musical number, and it's hilarious because everybody was like, I don't want to listen to this. So they all were scanning the radio and found Orson Welles' show, and they found it in the middle of music playing. So they had no idea it was even a show. They just thought it was music.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It's so cool. After another few minutes, announcers would interrupt for the final time, stating a shock of almost earthquake proportions was detected about 20 minutes outside of Princeton, where the Princeton Observatory of Princeton is located.
Right, Princeton.
It would turn out that there was thought to be a meteor had landed on a farm in a very small neighborhood of Grover Mills. A special unit is sent down to investigate, and before long, a giant crowd shows up to see what happened. At the impact site was a large metal object, which they found out was not a meteor, and the way they described it as being a orange-yellow color, which is interesting because nowadays it's always like a metallic or like it's like dark with lights on it, and they described it as kind of looking like a giant orange.
This is how The Blob starts.
It is how The Blob starts. You're right. I love that fucking movie.
We've seen it twice.
I've seen it more than twice. I've watched it with people. I love that movie.
I love it.
I think the diner's on fire. They just cut to the diner being on fire.
It didn't work. The diner's on fire.
It's so good. It's such a stupid movie.
Uh-oh.
I don't have anything else to take off.
Uh-oh.
Wow, that's tremendously helped. Wow.
Yeah, you look more comfortable now.
I feel comfortable.
Good. I feel comfortable.
Good. As the crowd fought to get closer and closer to the front of the object, it would open up and a large creature, it blew up. A large creature described as a gray, bear-sized serpent, which is fucking so cool.
Yeah.
It said that it had a mouth like a V, so it was just constantly always like smiling, and it would open up like that. Fucking super cool. Such good imagery. emerge from the giant orange.
Yeah.
As the terrified crowd watches the creature come out one by one, creatures, they waved a flag to show peace because they're like, we don't want any problems. We just want to see what your giant orange could do. Mm-hmm. And they immediately started shooting them with laser guns.
The Martians shot the humans?
100%, yeah. And they just start laying fucking waste to this area. Eventually, after shooting them with ray guns, it cuts from Grover Mills.
Yeah.
And then that's like the first like holy shit moment where people really started to get nervous. But what's funny about it is when they're describing it beforehand, it's a guy that's in a studio as an actor. And like I said, the acting is pretty good for 1938.
Yeah.
But like the guy that isn't Orson Welles that's acting is kind of like, and they're shooting them. And everyone is on fire. Oh my God, that man just went on fire. And it's so funny because there's no urgency in his voice.
And to our modern ears, it just sounds like everything sounded in the 1930s. So that could have been really bad acting for the time. But everything sounds
That's actually a good point. Yeah.
It's like, oh no, the aliens are attacking us. And then there's another person like, oh no, the aliens are attacking us. Like, they all just sound the same.
Wells showed the actor that read this part. I forgot what his name is. He showed him the Hindenburg footage of the guy going, the humanity, to try to get that to encourage it, which later down the road in the show he does. I'll give him that. But this one is really fun. It's really funny to listen to.
Did you know that the Hindenburg voice is actually very, very deep?
It's at the time they didn't have their recording only really recorded mids.
Yeah.
It didn't record highs or lows. So that's why everyone sounded exactly the same.
Right. So his voice was more like, oh, the humanity.
There's always like this idea, the transatlantic accent is real, obviously, but there's always this idea that everything sounded the same and it's just because all their equipment was garbage.
Yeah.
More or less.
No, that's exactly it.
Oh, so now we get to the infamous tripod machines, which I'm going to literally mention one time.
And I was going to ask you too. You've seen the designs from the book.
Yeah,
it looks like a farmhouse with an eyeball.
Oh,
a bunch of
the
tentacles.
original designs that you see on the cover of the book is so well. The original cover doesn't have anything on it, but the later reimagining from the early 1900s, it's so interesting to see what they thought would be alien life before UFOs, because they literally just think it's a giant metal crab, and it just walks around and just goes. And then just starts fucking killing everything. It's great.
Yeah.
Super cool.
It's really cool.
The infamous tripods are now said to be reported from a man in Manhattan on a rooftop. So this guy is just giving his, like, it cuts to him and he's like, yeah, from this area I could see this giant machine. And he says that it was releasing huge plumes of black smoke, which spread very fast, picking people off like flies. The show then drifts into a more conventional drama, going from survivor to survivor until they were no longer surviving.
Jesus.
And then moved on. So this is something that is interesting when it comes to the black plumes of smoke.
Yeah.
Because they never get into what it is, but it's really creepy. So just to give you like the idea of what they were going for. Basically, if in Manhattan, so if you've ever been to a large commercial, like a large industrial city or urban city, whatever you want to call it, just think of like you're on the street and a thing the size of 3 of the skyscrapers around you is shooting people and releasing giant fucking waves of smoke. Yeah. And everyone's running away and there's just a guy on a roof in Manhattan looking down like, oh, fuck. And he says, it's about 100 meters away. Now it's about 80 meters away. And it's 60 meters away. And then he starts coughing. He's like, oh, no, it's 40 yards away. Yeah, it's really genuinely scary. It's a really well done show. And I can understand why people were freaked out.
Yeah.
And just for reference, this is right after World War I, where gas was the main way of killing the enemy. And that gas was outlawed after World War I because it got so bad. So this is like... For someone that's just tuning in that doesn't have context, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
The Martians continued to crush the surrounding areas, being totally immune to Earth's weapons. So they were shooting guns and they were just fucking bouncing off like Superman. Mm-hmm. Thousands have died, and it was just the beginning. The night would pass by with death and destruction leading the way. The story, just like any other story of the time, is broken up into 3 acts, right? The first act is kind of what really fucked people up. The last 2 acts we're going to see... The fear of the first one kind of stopped people from thinking logically towards the second part.
Was that all the first act?
That was the first and second act. Okay. We're going to get into the third act now, yeah. The first act is them interrupting with news bulletins. Once it cuts to Grover Mills with the guy on the scene, then that's the second act. The second act is basically them attacking, and then the third act is the conclusion of the story.
Right.
Which is...
It's Halloween.
What other thing? I'm a zombie.
Hey. I want to suck your dick.
That's Dracula. That's my impression of Dracula. I want to suck your cock. Like, Pearson then meets another man after wandering for some time. The man tells Pearson he fears the Martians aren't looking to eradicate them. And this is probably the scariest part. He says that they want to use them instead as livestock, the way that we do for cattle.
It's a cookbook! It's a cookbook!
They talk back and forth, and this man in a single night has gone fucking totally insane.
Do you need to take off some more of that sheet?
I don't think I can. There you go.
Okay.
You're going to take the satchel?
Yeah, I'm going to take my satchel off.
Fuck you. Oh my God.
Sorry, I just gave you a
Just
cat.
hit my foot so hard.
Oh, that was your foot.
It's my foot. And he specifically says, which I think this is really presumptuous considering you just met the Martians last night and they're giant serpent creatures.
Yeah.
But he makes it sound like they're going to more or less like take them to Mars and like breed them and fatten them up and use them for food. And then like some of them will be like kept like dogs, like pets. And then other times they'll be just like thrown into the wild and like hunted. And like, I guess, but like they're giant serpents with ray guns that could travel from planet to planet. I kind of feel like they're really not going to really bother.
Did they
too
have
much.
feet?
What?
Did they have feet, or did they just slither around?
That's a good question. What do you want?
I want them to just slither around. I don't want them to have feet.
They had feet.
Shit.
Yeah, they had giant, really big comical feet. And they would walk around like, duh, 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 and they just start shooting people with ray guns.
Thanks, buddy.
One of the things that was really cool is the way that the mountain behind them or the hills behind them were described in Grover Mills after they had finished more or less like ray gunning the entire area. They described it as looking like it had just been covered with fresh black snow, which is, again, they're talking about rolling hills, like for as far as you could see is just blackness, which is again really fucking frightening.
Yeah.
So the guy says to Pearson, he's going to survive underground and build a community to fight back, but not to save his fellow man. He feels he feels if he could get the way gun, he could take over the apocalyptic remains of Earth. Pearson humors the man, and the two part ways, with Pearson heading through the Holland Tunnel to see Manhattan. But to his surprise, the titty...
The titty? To his surprise, the titties were gone.
The titties were great. But to his surprise, the city was totally devoid of war. It had been destroyed, but instead of finding basically like a battle going on, he finds the streets are just littered with Earthlings and Martians. All of them are dead. He realizes that he's watching animals run back and forth with like flesh in their mouth, but it's like a brown gray color. And he realizes that the animals that survived are eating the Martians. That's what he's seeing. And the way that he describes the bodies on the floor is shocking for 1938 when they couldn't even say like fuck. Because he's like, there's blood everywhere. There's a man with his throat ripped out. It's like, okay, I got the point.
But don't say pregnant on TV.
Yeah, but don't say that you love your wife. Like the book, the show concludes the same way, which I find this ending to be kind of cool. It's a cool ending. Basically, the disease and bacteria on Earth kills the Martians because they're able to make space travel. They could travel to Earth. They most likely have gone to other planets before, seem like they've done this before, don't understand how bacteria works. So they flew all the way here, and then within a single night, every single Martian is taken by some disease and is killed by the disease.
It's interesting, too, because both movies are both like... There have been like 10 movies that come out, but both major movies from the 50s and the one, the Spielberg one, 2004, or whatever that was. 2004, 2005, doesn't matter.
I think it was 2004.
2004. Yeah. 2005.
They had feet.
Both of them kind of deviate from the book, but they both, when it comes to the aliens and how they die and what they do, they're pretty faithful.
How did they do it in the 50s movie? I didn't watch the 50s movie.
It's that they die from the disease.
Are they just like comically like, oh,
no, you see a little like it's such a cute little plastic hand, like a practical effect, and it comes out from the UFO and then it just dies.
That's so stupid.
Yeah, like it runs out of air. It's like me on Friday night, am I right?
Ha ha ha, because you're sucking that dick. The broadcast then ends with an out-of-character Wells talking to the audience, describing that it was basically like dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and say boo. Now you get the costume. It has been revealed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
This is really confusing for the people not watching on YouTube. On the I'm Not Crazy YouTube.
That is true. We have to keep in mind that this isn't just a visual show.
So they've heard boo, they heard a rip, something fell, and you just started going, and started clapping.
So this whole time I had a sheet over me to act like a ghost, and as soon as I got to this part, I took it off because he rips it off and says boo.
Did you use that to sleep? Was that an actual one of your blankets? Or did you buy that?
No.
You just bought
I'm going to be honest with you. I found this in my closet, and it's a twin-size sheet.
Yeah.
I lost everything in a flood. I have no idea where I got the sheet. I haven't had a twin-size bed since I lived home, and I haven't lived home in 6 years.
Huh.
I'm confused about where this
You don't
came
even
from.
have a twin.
I don't have it. You're right.
So weird.
I don't know where... I guess sheet just happens.
No,
No, don't. So now that we understand the broadcast and we understand the context and what happened, and again, I know it sounds really dumb. Go listen to the show. It really makes sense when you listen to it. It is genuinely fucking great.
Yeah.
It's so well produced. And again, the noises that they make is something that I want to harp on because the noises are fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
You think that the noise from the 2004 movie, like that, it sounds like metal scraping on metal in like the most demonic way. It's really, really fucking cool. Now, because of this, obviously, there was panic. So now while the show was going on, calls started to flood local authorities. And this is true. The local police in New Jersey, in multiple places in New Jersey, from like Elizabeth down to like South Jersey, were calling in because they were like, what the fuck is going on?
right.
The cops, more or less, just said everything was cool. But then they got so bad with calls that the studio received a call directly from the chief of police demanding that they stop the interruption, they stop the broadcast, or interrupt to claim that it was a fictitious event and not actually happening. This came over 30 minutes past the start of the show, with their first interruption not happening until 40 minutes in. So just by chance, they were able to get 30 minutes into the show with a planned break at 40 minutes. And they were able to keep that scheduled planned break. So even with authorities, like, you have to tell people this is fake, they were still able to keep on schedule with the show, which I think Welles wanted, to be fair. And I think this backs it up also. Because guys, great name. Actor Stefan Schnabel.
Schnabel. Andrew, no. Andrew, no, stop. Andrew, no. He's putting scissors right to his skin. Oh, no.
Now it's totally off me.
That could have been a comfortable sheet.
For what?
Oh, don't do that.
Twin size bed.
No, you gotta stop.
My nipples are hard.
Hey, all you skinny ninnies.
Hey, all you people. Hey, all you people. Hey, all you people, won't you listen to me? I just got a sandwich, no ordinary sandwich, a sandwich filled with jellyfish jelly. Hey, man, you've got to try this sandwich. It's no ordinary sandwich. It's the tastiest sandwich in the sea.
That was ridiculous. I hope that's
The entire thing is going to go in.
My favorite is when you tell even a joke that's even slightly funny, and I just watch him crack up in the corner of my eye.
He's the best audience I can get. Actor Stefan Schnabel. Oh, just to give you a heads up, if the cutting is weird, we had a camera issue. We're good. Everything's fine. So Stefan Schnabel, third time. He claimed that a few policemen trickled in as the show was going on, and then a few more. Soon the room was full of policemen, and there was a massive struggle going on between the police, the page boys, and CBS executives who were trying to prevent the cops from busting in and stopping the show totally. And this is true. This happened. So this kind of gives you a little bit of like an insight of the actual panic.
That's amazing.
It's super cool because they were like, you got to go in. We got to stop them. And Welles is just like, please, for the love of God, don't come in this room. And there's no hint of this in the show at all.
Yeah.
There's no background music. You do not hear anything. Well, to be fair, there is a lot of screaming, so you could be hearing it, but it blends in with the show well, if that's the case.
I don't know if I'm jumping the gun at all, but were there any arrests?
No.
Were there any
No legal
Fines?
action taken. No one sued anyone. Nothing. No, this is 38. People didn't do that yet. Okay. But it was already too late. When the cops showed up and all that.
Yeah.
According to reports at the time, panic had already set in. The show had done such a convincing job of portraying a disaster. Apparently, no one stuck around for the second act of the show. As I said earlier, the first act is the part that really fucked with people.
Yeah.
And that is where the radio drama really kicks in. So if you were to listen to the show with context back then, even if you missed the monologue, once you got to the second act, it was pretty much the same as other dramas at the time, just, better.
Yeah.
Just really good.
Yeah.
The story goes that once the show had ended, Welles and the rest of the crew, knowing what was going on, exited through the back to avoid attention from the broadcast. Not understanding the scope of what was going on, Welles then went to a late-night rehearsal at the Mercury Theater. Sometime after midnight, a friend would let Welles know that the New York Times building bulletin read, "Orson Welles causes panic." And this is cool because I didn't even know they had that technology back then.
That's how you know you're at a really good stage in your career and you've made the right move.
Fuck yeah. It's so cool. I got chills. It's so cool. Newspapers started to run with the story, containing the entire towns of New Jersey and New York were fleeing in terror of a Martian invasion. So now the news really started to run is probably like understating it. They immediately started printing stories as if the country was on fucking fire.
That's called yellow journalism, baby.
Yeah, because it's purse. Welles only slept a few hours that night coming home from the rehearsal. He only slept for a few hours and then was dragged to a press conference by CBS where he stated the following. This is just the beginning. It's very long. You could watch the whole thing. It's filmed. And you watch a 23-year-old Welles try to talk himself out of a hole.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's really cool. So I'm going to have you do Welles.
Okay, now I'm a little rusty on my Orson Welles impression.
So this is how it went. Were you aware of the terror such a broadcast would stir up?
Definitely.
Keep going, keep it going, come on.
The technique I used was not original with me. It was not even now. I anticipated nothing unusual. How was that?
Unlegible. What's the word? I don't know what you're saying.
Unlegendary.
Unlegible, I was going to say.
No, okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
You want me to actually try to do Orson Welles?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
Were you aware of the terror such a broadcast would stir up?
Definitely not. The technique I used was not original with me. It was not even now.
It's fucking good.
That was a pretty, yeah.
That's really good. A little old.
I've watched Citizen Kane.
It's a little higher pitch because he's a little younger.
It was not even new. I anticipated nothing unusual.
Should you have toned down the language of the drama?
No, you don't play murder in soft words.
That's a great fucking line.
Yeah, he's fucking...
Why was the story changed to put the names of American cities and government officials?
Hey, I can't read the script now, buddy. That's my water.
Get the fuck down. What are you doing?
Excuse me.
Come here, you little fuck. He's so cute. I love him. Wow, 4 questions. It's taken fucking forever.
So ask me that question again.
Why was the story changed to put the names of American cities and government officials?
H.G. Wells used real cities in Europe, and to make the play more acceptable to American listeners, we used real cities in America. Of course, I'm terribly sorry now.
And then it kept going, and as it went on, you could kind of see the shift in Orson Welles from like, I fucked up, to him realizing that he didn't fuck up. And this is huge for him.
You know what this reminds me of? And I'm so sorry. I swear, I promise I'm not going to bring this up the rest of the show. But this is just like when Opie and Anthony said that Mayor Menino was dead, and they got blindsided by news cameras, and they were trying to apologize, and they were on the spot.
And they realized the gravity of what was happening in a sense of this is going to help them, and not so much as like, I'm done.
Yeah.
This was like, this is just the start.
Yeah.
And I think that he saw that entirely.
He kissed me, if you didn't see that. He kissed me on the forehead.
I love you.
Oh,
I want to kiss that soft little fucking taint.
Oh, ew. I have a friend who got a needle in his taint.
Why?
He just had to do it. Chaya.
You're just going to say it? Sorry.
No,
sorry, Chaya.
He loves it. It's fine.
Why?
I don't know.
What do you mean?
A nurse had to put a needle in his taint.
Why?
I don't know
Matthew,
why.
I need more. Can you call him? I need more. I don't know why. Why would you ever need to put a needle in your taint?
I don't know. He might be lying. But it's like a legendary story that he's told for years.
Kind of like this one.
That the nurse had to hold his balls in place and he giggled.
So now, the panic was reportedly devastating, with many residents of New Jersey and New York fleeing for safety, as we said earlier. Mm-hmm. For those unaware of the broadcast, they were told by friends and family of the invasion as it was happening in real time. The fear caused a wide range of fearful acts to occur. We're going to go through the spectrum. You ready? Mm-hmm. Some people let their pets free, then ran themselves to try to get to safe ground because they figured, might as well give Sparky a fucking shot. People were running into churches screaming about the end of the world, and the way that this is framed is literally someone would just bust through the church in the middle of a service, and he'd just basically like, Martians are invading, we're all gonna die, and then just run out.
So is that all real?
This was all happening during the show. During the show, yeah.
During the show.
No. We're gonna get to it in a minute. What a sound. The news got so crazy that places all over the world, as far as fucking Australia, in 1938, Australia thought the U.S. was on fucking fire.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's crazy that this got as far as it did. It seems that Welles had caused the greatest radio hoax of all time up until present day, followed by one of the wildest public reactions to a piece of media in history. Well, that is, if it happened that way.
I read somewhere once, or someone told me once, and I don't know if this is true, so I wanted to confirm it with the expert himself, Orson Welles, in front of me.
That is lie.
I once heard...
He's dead.
I once
1985.
Heard that there was a woman or a man, I don't remember, but someone heard about this while it was happening.
Drink poison?
No. Someone heard about this while this was happening, and they got so terrified that they ran as fast and as far as they could, and they ruined their shoes. So they, after it was done, and they figured out that it was fake, they called the radio station and demanded that they buy them new shoes.
Police stations were getting calls by the thousands at this point, asking what they could do to save their fellow men. There are reports of a woman drinking some kind of poison, stating she'd rather die than by her own hand than by the hands of the Martians. People apparently flung themselves off rooftops to accelerate the inevitable. Mobs lined the streets of Manhattan trying to get off the doomed island of Manhattan, and this was just a small fraction of what was being reported. It's kind of hard to find them, but you can find some articles about it, and they make it sound like Manhattan was gone, like crumbling. It is nuts.
So you haven't heard about the shoe thing?
I've never heard. Oh, I just totally ignored that. My bad. I have never heard about the shoe thing. No,
that might not be. I don't know where I heard that, but I remember it's just in the.
That's a fun story.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. I'm gonna say it's true. It's true.
It's true. It really happened.
It's true.
It was my grandfather.
It was his grandfather. He ran.
That was his name. He ran.
Yeah. It turns out he walked. Who would have thought? So now we're gonna get into kind of the real story now. Okay. So now, just to recap, right? We have the broadcast. We have the crazy reaction during the broadcast, and then we have all of the things that I just said, which is what the newspapers were reporting was happening, right? So now we've gotten the whole story out of the way. It's time to see how they line up with the facts as we know it. And unfortunately, is nowhere near as exciting as it seemed, according to the newspapers, which is good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
At this point in time, we know this entire situation was massively overstated and overreported. It turns out that not a single death was attributed to the broadcast, and though calls did flood the radio stations to the thousands and the police stations, most of the public had the common sense and put two to two together. It was the day before Halloween.
Okay.
So the people that so it seems like there was two camps of people. There was the people that just kind of figured it out that it was fake, and then there was the other camp of people that just fucking were like, "Oh my god, life is over. We're fucked."
Yeah.
And though most people at the time may have not been technologically advanced as we are now, they did possess common sense, and the actual reaction was much more logical. Though the broadcast, I can't speak tonight. Though the broadcast did frighten a small group of its listeners into a mild panic, the newspapers are responsible for sensationalizing the story, but the reason that they did it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think the real reaction was like, "Oh shit, is this real?" No, it's not real. It's like a fake Halloween thing. Oh, okay.
It seems like what happened with the broadcast started, people started calling like crazy after the monologue because they missed it, and then the police were like, "Nah, it's fine, it's just a radio show," and they were like, "Ah, all right." Mm-hmm. That's more or less what happened.
Yeah.
There are a couple people. I just want to be totally clear. I'm not labeling it as pandemonium or pandemic or panic, whatever you want to call it. I'm not labeling it as that, but there were people that legitimately did react.
Sure.
Very weird. Like they just ran away from their houses. It's kind of weird. Where are you going? You know? People were more like angry at the radio station than they were scared of the Martians.
Yeah.
Because they were like, how are you going to do that to us?
Yeah.
You know? As a country, we were at the tail end of the decade-long Great Depression. And all types of businesses suffered, majorly including newspapers. Newspapers were something that, even though they were important and they needed to, they were necessary at the time to get the news out and all that, people just weren't buying newspapers like that because they just couldn't afford them. The industry had been totally ravaged by the Depression, causing many publishers to go out of business. The writers that were left were looking for anything that they could write to sell papers, showing us one of the earliest examples of widespread false news. This is probably the earliest that I refuse to put fake news. This is one of the things that I found the most interesting about this is because when you boil the story down, it does come down to a bunch of reactionary people, but it's not the public. It was the news stations that were trying to get the public to react that way, but they just didn't. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, the further we got away from the story until Orson Welles died, it got more and more exaggerated as time went on to the point that now we know it as this giant event that almost fucking destroyed New Jersey, and that's not what happened at all.
Right.
Not even close. When other countries started to report on it, it only made the situation worse and caused the night to basically become legendary. It caused what it was because now people all over the world were talking about it, and in the U.S., we were then told, like, we could see what's happening directly. It's not that bad, whatever. In Australia, they have no fucking context of what happened other than they just all of a sudden saw in the papers, like, did you see the Manhattan's kind of destroyed because everybody thought Martians were attacking? Like, oh, no, that's crazy, honey. And then that's a fucking awful accent.
Oh, that's crazy.
I just went straight up Southern. I don't know what happened.
And you know what's interesting too is that everyone says that the internet ruins things like that, like fake news and everything. Mm-hmm. But it's really just it was the same shit when we had horse and buggies. It's just humans. It has nothing to do with the medium.
I think the scale has gone up.
Sure.
But that's because the scale of everything has gone up.
Yeah, now everyone has access to it.
So this leads to the next point. How many people actually listen to the show? This is something I haven't brought up at all because it's something that's kind of argued. In the beginning, a lot of places report that 2.3 million people were listening to the show. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's true. It would turn out only a tiny percentage of the population heard the show. Maybe a few tens of thousands at most. The show, up until this point, had garnered pretty low ratings and was not picked up by other radio stations. This was kind of like a local show. This was not broadcast across the U.S. This is something that people don't realize. This was basically only broadcast to New Jersey and New York.
Which basically is America.
Yeah, of course, New York. There were other shows happening at the time, which we know for a fact had a way larger audience. One of these shows being the Chase and Sanborn Hour, which is the show that apparently people would come over from after the initial skit, didn't want to watch the fucking guy sing, and said, let's go listen to music that we like.
Yeah.
It eclipsed the show, Wells show, in terms of numbers by far. Mm-hmm. And it was not reporting an alien invasion. And this is something that gets overlooked a lot, is that people were tuning into Chase and Sanborn like, is this really happening? And then they weren't reporting anything. So they were just like, it's probably just a radio show. Mm-hmm. You know? Also, something I want to mention, there was another radio show that was happening at the time that people kept calling into because he was, I forgot who the fuck he is. He's really famous, but he was kind of like seen as the voice of reason at the time. You know, like Piers Morgan.
Is it like Walter Cronkite?
It might be Walter Cronkite.
What's the name of the guy who reported JFK's death? I think that was Walter Cronkite.
Billy William.
It was Billy Mays. JFK died! He got shot in the head!
His brains are all over the street! It's like, oh my god.
What a very specific joke.
It is, wow. So they kept calling into this radio station, and the guy, after a while, he got kind of fed up and was like, there is not an alien invasion. Have I ever lied to you before? And everybody was like, that's a good point. And people started accusing him of a cover-up, of a government cover-up.
Oh, shit.
They were claiming that he was more or less being used by the government to stop it from being told, which...
That's a really...
From what I know of, from my knowledge of, like, U.S. politics and stuff like that, This is probably one of the earliest examples I could find of that.
People saying the government covered it up?
Was part of a cover-up when it came to aliens. Literally, specifically.
Wow.
This could be one of the first events of that, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. And to add even more to this point, and this is something that kind of tears the entire thing down, on-the-scene reporting wasn't possible at the time. They were known to record things ahead of time and then broadcast them the day after events happened. So like when the Hindenburg went down, that was not happening live. That was broadcast after the fact.
Right.
And many listeners were aware of that, if not most or all listeners. It would kind of be the equivalent of like if we were it's kind of hard to make the example now because there's so much possible like CGI and stuff like that.
It's like if we were watching a news report and the guy's on Mars.
And the guy just starts flying.
Yeah.
And we're just like, wow. Look at that.
Yeah.
He's up in the air,
Yeah.
you know?
I know that modern people, what a weird way to describe
it's modern folk.
People like to describe people 100 years ago as stupid and like they didn't know what showers were. And but like they were people and they knew what things were and they knew where they were in terms of advancements and they knew what we can do and what we can't.
Exactly. It would be the equivalent of watching a superhero movie debut and having CNN and Fox News report that there was major building damage in New York because of them fighting the villains. That's more or less what happened.
Okay.
No one would believe that, and evidence shows they didn't believe it then either. But the fear that the show caused initially was real, but it seemed it ended as soon as the show did. Now, it's apparent that some
It's apparent that It's apparent that so far I could take.
I can't. Now, it's apparent that some listeners tuned in late, missing. Christ almighty!
Do you want a drink of water?
Yeah.
The cat was...
Forget it.
I can get you.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. It's my cat. I don't give a fuck.
What do you French kiss your cat?
Every night. Now, it's apparent that some listeners tuned in late, missing the initial monologue and not realizing a show had been taking place. There was a myth that most of the late listeners came from the Chase and Sanborn Hour, which seemingly had a dull episode causing many viewers to seek out other shows. But with the help of audience surveys, so at the time, when a show would go on the radio, they would call the house of the people and say, did you listen to it? Yes or no? And they would say yes or no. And then if you said yes, they would ask you more questions about how long you listened to it. And that's how they got ratings back then, which is so fucking weird.
That's really funny.
Imagine your full-time job is to call, like, I put this podcast out, and then, like, fucking Chris is just sitting there like, hey, did you listen to it? Yeah? What'd you think? All right, cool, thanks. Write it down, move on to the next person. Bizarre. Well, if this was as patently fake as it seems, why did everyone freak out at all? We know now that the reports of mass suicide and mass exodus were fake, but the massive amount of calls to the local police and radio, again, seem true at their core.
Yeah.
This is also a very logical thing to have happened, because just to give context, if you didn't put two and two together with the year, we are 1 year before World War II, and the country is terrified of Germany. They are horrified of Hitler, and everything that is happening in the show, once again, as I stated, World War I was just ending. Everyone kind of knew World War II was on the horizon. All of Europe was fighting, and Hitler kept talking about the U.S. and how much he wanted to get the U.S. and invade them. And people were really scared of this happening. So what actually happened, what it seems actually happened, was actually invading. They thought this was it.
Yeah.
And him invading New York and New Jersey wouldn't be out of the question because New York is a major city and they line up with the East Coast of the U.S. So this was something that people took like as an actual threat, but not from Martians. They just thought it was fucking Germans, for lack of a better way to put it. Nazis, I should say, not Germans, Nazis.
Aliens had nothing to do with it.
Not that I know of. I mean, it depends how far you go into Hitler. Aliens might have had something to do with it.
What I'm saying is like they weren't panicking because of aliens.
No, they were panicking. They were panicking because of Hitler.
Okay. I panic because of Hitler every
night.
time
I wake up every night and just go, oh, Deutsch.
Yeah. I played Hitler once.
There were pictures. This is taking place just... Maybe I'll flash one on screen real quick. This is taking place just 11 months before the invasion of Poland starting World War II. And this quote says it all. For the entire month prior to the War of the Worlds, radio had kept the American public alert to the ominous happenings throughout the world. The Munich crisis was at its height. For the first time in history, the public could tune into their radios every night and hear boot by boot, accusation by accusation, threat by threat, the rumblings that seemed inevitably leading to a world war. And I think that's probably the best fucking way to put it.
Man, people are great writers.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like, there were so many things that I read that were written by Orson Welles in this, and he is just I mean, it's overstated, but he is just such an amazing writer. I'm kind of a fan of him after this whole thing. I want to watch his movies and all that. Many of the calls to the police were more worried about Hitler invading the U.S. They were told that there was no invasion, and it seemed that the true extent of the broadcast panic was just that. Hitler even mentioned this in a speech. This situation, the War of the Worlds broadcast.
Yeah.
And he used it as an example of the downfall of democracy in the U.S., which is a weird connection to make. But, for a very logical man, very weird. He said this in a speech, and he was more or less like, look at them, the stupid fucking morons over there. Like Hitler would say.
Right. That's kind of probably what he would say.
It's super interesting. It's really, really cool.
Huh. Yeah, like, you've made something good with your art when Hitler says something about it.
That's what I'm waiting for, Hitler to comment on this podcast.
You know what Hitler's favorite movie was?
Chocolate cake. That's a very old joke between the two of us. That's a very old joke.
There's no way to explain that.
There was zero context to it, and I don't even know if I have context at this point. Years later, TV adaptations were made, dramatizing the events and cementing them as legend. And these two specifically, there have been multiple specials made. These two really are what cemented the idea, in my opinion. We had The Night That America Trembled in 1957, and The Night That Panicked America in 1975, which is kind of cool because it's 57, 75, it's interesting. These two documentaries show the total false events of what happened.
Yeah.
So they show people sprinting out of their house, just like, we need to find safety. And like massive panic, things are on fire.
They may as well just make War of the Worlds.
It was basically War of the Worlds minus the fucking Martians.
Yeah.
Which is super fun.
Yeah, really weird.
It's so strange. And the 57 movie is actually, when I was initially doing this and I spoke to you, I actually said that the movie from 1957 was the cause of it. And it's actually not. The one from 75 is the cause. The one for 57 actually kind of is a little half between. So like I said, as time went on, the idea and the legend grew. And I think that it's evident if you watch these two specials, because you have the original of what happened. Then you have the 57 special, which is kind of like, people were panicking. But it ends with a couple driving to their parents' house, like freaking out over an alien invasion. And then they go in and the dad starts laughing at them, calling them naive, more or less. And The Night That Panicked America is the one that really shows like, holy shit, this was huge. I can't believe that we were able to make it past this as a country.
Yeah.
And they both showed the media's false and bloated depiction of events. As for Welles himself, it seemed like those around him really did feel like he knew exactly what he was doing. Welles had a reputation for pushing the boundaries to get desired results, and I have a story here, so it's his dagger story.
Okay.
Just to give an example of the type of thing that Orson Welles would do.
Yeah.
Just to kind of feed into my point that this was done entirely on purpose, and I feel like this was calculated. He was in Shakespeare. I believe it was Macbeth, right? You know Shakespeare somewhat.
Yeah.
Is Macbeth the one where someone gets stabbed?
Someone gets stabbed in half of his stories.
Cool.
Yeah.
So he did. I know he did Shakespeare.
But
I'm sorry, Macbeth.
In Macbeth
and Othello. Those are the two big ones that he did.
Yes, and not only does someone get stabbed in Macbeth, but our friend Frank West played that guy who gets stabbed and dies in
shut
Macbeth.
up. Frank West will be on the show eventually. So there's a story where Welles is on stage and they're auditioning. They're not auditioning. What's the word? Rehearsing. They're rehearsing the show, and they had a fake knife made of plastic.
Yeah.
And Welles refused to use it because it didn't shine like a real knife. Mm-hmm. So he used the real knife instead. And every single night, he got closer and closer to stabbing the actual actor.
Yeah.
And then finally actually stabbed him by mistake. So, like, Welles really pushed the envelope until he couldn't do it anymore, because he would lose his job.
But yeah, there's like a difference between, look how brilliant he was, and that's fucking crazy. Yeah.
I think he grew out of this 100%. He didn't really do this later on as much. He was actually known to be, by people that worked with him, like really great to work with. He wasn't like a crazy, like Christian Bale, where he's just screaming at everybody on set. Like, he was great to work with. People loved him. And one of those people was John Landis of National Lampoon fame. He did with the Blues Brothers. Mm-hmm. Blues Brothers 2.
The Twilight Zone, where he killed 3 people.
The Twilight Zone, the 80s. What's the frat movie? Animal House?
Did he do Home Alone?
No.
Who did Home Alone?
John Landis. Being very good friends with Orson Welles his whole life, which I didn't know. The two of them were very close until he died. He said he was a brilliant and innovative man, and he milked it for all it was worth. When they were talking about how embarrassed he was, I don't think so. If you look at the press conference, he's so contrite. He's just acting his brains out, and he's clearly delighted.
Yeah, I like to think that he was having the fucking time of his life when the police were in the other room.
Again, if you watch the interview after the press conference where he's sitting there talking about it, it is very clear that he is happy about what happened, especially as it goes on, and he's trying to be sincere, but like his answers, we read them. His answers are more like, no, it's fucking, you're dumb. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And even with all the context given, that Strange Night in 1938 will always go down as one of the most influential marketing techniques of all time, intentional or not. Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, Cannibal Holocaust, and The Exorcist, and many more horror movies played with the idea of them being absolutely real. So if you don't feel like this could happen, read about when Blair Witch came out. Yeah. If you were old enough to remember Paranormal Activity, everybody was fucking freaking out.
Yeah.
The Exorcist caused like people to run out of theaters because they thought it was real.
Even Cloverfield. The trailer came out. It didn't even have a title of the movie. People just thought it was fucking footage.
You're right. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's a great movie. I don't know if I'd say that, but I love that movie. The War of the Worlds broadcast is totally fascinating and terrifying. As I stated in the beginning of the episode, I strongly encourage everyone to listen to the broadcast during the spooky season. The acting and production is mind-blowing for the time, and the genius of Orson Welles is on full display. The reaction is not just shocking after listening, I promise you that. And that is the War of the Worlds Panic of 1938.
Good job. Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kind of dumb with her finger.
And that's the episode. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Matthew, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your
I really
podcast.
enjoyed this.
I'm going to shake your hand.
Of course, yeah. I wanted you to come on because of course, Orson Welles.
I wanted you to come.
Thanks, man. I did multiple times. You are a film person, obviously. You're a filmmaker. So I just felt like this was good. And the more I read into it, the happier I was to get you on because I feel like this is perfect for you.
Yeah.
And I would love to have you on for future similar stories.
I'm not coming on again.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Is there anything you would like to plug?
The tub when I take a bath.
Wow, it was a good one, man.
Thanks, that made me laugh.
It did. It made you laugh more than anyone in the room.
That was funny.
But yeah, you have, I think, go to purplecloud.com.
Yeah, just follow my joke account on Instagram. It's called Titties. No, follow me on Instagram, Matt Provenzano 5. I mainly post pictures of my paintings and my drawings and sometimes my face. You can visit my website, mattprovenzano.com, or purplecloudentertainment.com, or purplecloudny.com. There's a lot of URLs, I swear to God.
Or purplecloud, maybe this is the one.com, or purplecloud, it wasn't the one.com. Purplecloud, this is definitely the one.com.
They all lead to things.
They all lead to different websites that aren't purplecloud. But yeah, and then also, I want to plug this because as someone that is making a podcast and loves podcasts, go listen to Shock Jocks. It's made by Matthew. It's about Opie and Anthony, the rise of Opie and Anthony, and the whole story of their career. I have listened to it probably 15 times in my life, front to back. It is genuinely amazing.
Thank you.
So please go check that out.
Thank you.
And make sure you rate and review the show. If you don't already, follow it on YouTube. Watch it. The video is great. We try to make it as close to an audio podcast as possible so that you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. But
there's just bonus content.
It's just bonus content. It just adds a little extra. And if you want, maybe listen to it twice. Maybe once audio, maybe once video. You get to say what's going on about. Make sure you follow us on TikTok.
Can you do that again?
Go to TikTok to I'm Not Crazy Podcast and go to Instagram to I'm Not Crazy NY. Make sure you follow us there. I've been posting just clips of the show. There's only like a couple things up, but I'm going to start putting behind the scenes stuff. There was a video that I forgot to put in the last episode. I'm going to put up on there. And then just whatever we did behind the scenes here, whatever we got will be up there too. So go check that out. And that is it.
Cool. And just two more things I want to say, or a couple more things I want to say. First, if you want to watch us cook together, there's a show on YouTube called We Can't Cook that we made back in 2018.
Yeah, we did. That was fucking... It's still so good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
most of the episodes
me and
are
him
still
have been
there.
working together for fucking forever.
Yeah, we made the joke in the beginning that we never worked together, but we have literally made at least one show a year for 26 years.
But it's been great. This has been a really fun episode, and
I want to shout out.
That's really it.
I want to shout out to my brother Dominic and my sister-in-law Nicole, faithful listeners of the I'm Not Crazy podcast.
Really, I didn't know they listened to like that.
They love the show.
Oh, I love that.
Episode.
Oh, hello, Dominic. Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
Hello.
And I want to shout out to my beautiful, lovely girlfriend Camila, who made this shirt for me.
I was gonna say I've never met her, but I love her.
She made the link hat too, and we both made it together. She's it was great.
She's insanely talented.
She's incredibly talented. Yeah.
What is it crochet or stitching?
It's crochet.
Crochet? Yeah, she crochets like these like video game characters and stuff, and they are genuinely mind-blowing. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, if you could find her on Instagram, I think it's Red Toadstool Co.
I'll pop it up on screen. Just text me it, but I'll pop it up. But yeah, so thank you so much for listening. Again, please rate, review. It helps a ton. Tell your friends. Tell your family.
Tell your grandma.
Tell your fucking grandpa.
Goodbye.
Fuck you, Grandma. No, I love you, Grandma. I didn't mean that. Grandma wants to listen to this. She said to send her this after.
This is gonna be
so no, Grandma. I don't. I love you.
It's like I want to listen to your podcast, and she turns it on. Shit on your grandma's chest.
I want to listen to the podcast. Yeah, fuck Grandma.